had a salesperson, Jonathan, who always booked very eccentric couples, like Game of Thrones weddings. But he was not adjacent to that. Those weren't his interests. So I became, as his director of sales, I became a student of him. So I'm like, what is happening within his conversations? And this is what I realized, that he...
Welcome to the Venue RX. On this show, we document and share best practices around owning, operating, and managing world-class wedding venues.
What's up, everyone? Jonathan here with the Venue RX, and today we have a show that I think you're all are going to want to listen to. We are going to be talking about sales, and I could do an intro, but I'm really excited. I want to get right into this. Margaret, thank you so much for being here today. This is going to be fantastic.
Jonathan, thank you so much for having me. I love your podcast. I'm a listener, I'm a fan, and I'm thrilled to be here. You talk about so many relevant things in our industry, and venue people are my favorite people. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, we're going to talk to those venue people today, and we're going to talk about sales and really unpack. Just before we got on, we were talking about generations, how the generations have changed, ways of relating through the generations, whether it's on your team, to the clients, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to unpack a lot of really fantastic things today. If you are a venue owner and you're listening or watching this, you're going to want to listen to the whole thing. We're going to dive into your story right now, Margaret, just kind of like how you got here, but then we're going to really get into the nuts and bolts of some of this stuff. So yeah, give us a little bit of a preview. Give us some of your history. Give us a little backstory. How did you get in this industry in the very beginning, and just kind of take us through to where you are now?
Sure. Jonathan, in my heart, I am a venue salesperson. That's where I look at all of my situations from those eyes and that lens. 17 years ago, I was hired at my first venue without a title. It was a new venue that was opening in the Hudson Valley in New York. And I had a restaurant background. I was a restaurant manager, and I have to tell you, a great waitress in my day before that. And so when this new venue was opening, they were unsure of what they needed. And I became someone who was just the generalist. We need a marketing flyer. We need to do a filing system. We need to do all the things. And that's where I really fell in love with, it was a venue that was a caterer as well. So all in one. And from no weddings, we grew to going into the pandemic, 265 weddings at that venue for that year, two ballrooms, one seasonal, one full a year round. And I grew into the director of sales over the years for 4 venues for the company. And that same pandemic year, we had 660 weddings on the book. I was on the stage at Cater Source when after I finished speaking, I also took the call from my bride that weekend when my county closed. So that was that very specific point moved my whole career from loving and living this life of venues into being a resource for other venue and caterers and their companies.
Amazing. So, and it's not just Cater Source you've been on stage at. You've spoken at Wedding MBA, I believe, right?
Yeah, it's Wedding MBA, and I'm on the education committee for the International Caterers Association. And I was just at a workshop this week in Kansas City. So I have the good fortune through my company to help venues around the country and in Canada, and using my real life experience of being a director of sales for a venue. But I never stopped selling. I always had a book of business myself, because I think that in order to lead, you have to have real life experience and know what's going on with the client.
And know the problems, and what are the questions, and what's the friction that people are going to be experiencing, and how can you address that and serve that? So Are you currently in a venue sales role in any capacity? Or are you now transitioned fully to your company, Rainmaker?
So I'm transitioned to my company, but I serve clients in many capacities. In one client case, I am their remote director of sales for them in Milwaukee for their 6 venues. So that is one of my experience. So I do have very hands-on within the business. I like to work in the grit, Jonathan. I like to be with the people still. That's where I think the magic happens. And so from there, I work with directors of sales on both coasts and help them lead their team through hosting one-on-ones with venue salespeople, in Northern California. So there's a lot of capacities within my daily of the clients that I work with. But I think it is amazing that through all those different experiences, there's still such a trend that you can follow and pattern for what's happening to venues in the United States.
Yeah. I'm curious, those initial kind of 200 weddings that you got on the books, pre-pandemic, and then just the 600 that you mentioned and some of that, and kind of your initial success that you had, do you attribute that to any training, mentorship, a combination of all that? Is it kind of something that's in your personality and DNA that you love connecting with people? Like, give us a little bit of what led that early success and kind of encouraged and sparked this now career you have.
Thanks for asking. So I think it's a combination. I think it's a combination of a lot of different things. In the beginning of my career, I was a Saturday night salesperson, Italian, Greek, Jewish, big families, lots of desserts at the wedding. I was hugging and kissing the mom and dads. That was like the start of my success in my career. But then I realized that you can't sell out a venue only by booking Saturday nights. So I started observing team members that were booking Saturday afternoons and Thursday nights and Sundays. And that was like early in my career. So I realized that I couldn't be full Margaret all of the time because I wanted to connect with all of the couples and all of the clients coming in. And so I became a life student of why people make the decisions and how they connect with people. I watch a lot of interviews. That's why I'm a fan of your show, of like styles of everyone from Drew Barrymore to Howard Stern to Oprah to all of these different interview styles. And I adapted that over the years, and I still do, on how do you connect with people? Like who do they need you to be? And that really stems from my experiences from as deep as waiting tables, right? You can't treat everyone the same because you'll only connect with a very small portion of the people like you. And that law of similarity, that people like themselves. So I think real sales is authentic, and you could find a piece of yourself to connect with anyone.
Yes. Okay. I love that you said that. I relate to that so much because I do have that background in hospitality as well. I was a waiter for a while. I was a bartender. I was a restaurant manager, and it kind of, it increased from there, right? It was then, selling, I have my table of five, or I have my section of 5 tables, and then I have my bar top, and then I have my restaurant, right? And so, like you, I 100% agree. You can find those pieces of similarity, but I was asking the question because I think it is easy for people to say, I'm not a salesperson. They don't identify as a salesperson. And when you don't identify as a salesperson, you kind of feel like anything you do that has sales on it might feel a little like you're trying to convince someone to do something they don't want to do. And I love the way that you framed it, because it's not that. It's finding a similarity. It's finding a way to relate to them, something that you have in common with them. And we all have things in common with each other, right?
Yeah.
So as you start working with salespeople at these different venues, how do you coach people to help them become better salespeople? Like, what's the basis? What's the starting point for that?
You're going to laugh at what my homework for every person that I coach is, and any person that I've ever had on my team, is you have to talk to strangers. You have to, if you work with me, you have to be someone who can talk to strangers. It's like, Jonathan, how often do you talk to your Uber driver, right? If you are or someone that you are checking out at the grocery store?
A lot.
Of course you do, because you are a connector, right? And so do I. And so if you want to improve in sales, you have to connect. Yeah, my husband too. You have to the sales workout of that is, how fast can I make a connection with someone in an authentic way? What kind of questions do I ask? And, I hear some sales trainings that are very good and they talk about question asking. And I think I'm someone who is a forever student. So that's where you got to keep improving the skill. So do it in the basic level of your life. How do you connect with people? How do you make a friend? How do you, I was, pulling through a Wendy's drive-through. I have two girls and they were in the car. And I saw this person the first window, take my money, and she was leaning out the window. And so I said to her, oh, that sunshine must feel so great. And she said, actually, I'm always cold, so it feels wonderful. I said, are you someone who wears a sweater in the summer? And she said, I'm actually anemic, so I'm always cold. I said, my mom's anemic. And I said, do you eat red meat? And she said, I'm actually Puerto Rican. We eat a lot of red meat and a lot of pork and a lot of chicken, but it doesn't help. I said, oh, I hope this sunshine helps you today and you have a great day. And we pulled away. And my daughter said, well, that's a new one. They're giving you their medical records at the drive-through. But isn't that it? How I know, that's it. To me, that's it. If we continued that story and it happened in the lobby of a venue, it's the same exact thing. It's those seconds before you start talking about facts and figures and framework and upholstery and all those things. It's that makes people want to buy from you.
It's so true. There's this idea of fitting a square peg into a round hole. And if you kind of think of child's toys, I have 6 kids, right? And you think about those little ones where there's either little posts sticking up and you're sliding the little brick down on top of it or whatever, or, it's something else. You're taking a brick, a square, you're kind of finding the little hole that it goes into. You have to create those opportunities and either stick out or create a space that someone can fill. Because whether someone is introverted or extroverted, you have to create that opportunity that they can either fill a need that you kind of created by an opportunity to have a conversation, or, in your example at Wendy's, you're sparking up conversation. You're sharing something. My mom is anemic. You create this flow of the conversation. For someone who that sounds like the scariest thing in the world, they don't talk about the sunshine. They just are going to get their bag. They're going to take their money and they're just going to keep going along their way. Do you think you can be successful in sales without initiating some of these conversations and these connection points?
So I think that everyone has the potential to be successful. And I'm an optimist. So I'm not someone who's that person's not right for sales. I don't believe that. But I think that you have to exert a higher amount of energy when that isn't naturally within you, right? There has to be something more, a different motivator than connection with people. So if your motivator is to make money, right? If you're in the business to make money, you will have to adopt some strategies that are make you uncomfortable, right? So even for people who are more introverted, they have the same homework that they have to try and connect with people, but maybe they connect with someone on a different way. So I had a salesperson, Jonathan, who always booked very eccentric couples that Game of Thrones weddings, like that. But he was not adjacent to that. Those weren't his interests. So I became, as his director of sales, I became a student of him. So I'm like, what is happening within his conversations? And this is what I realized, that he let people be comfortable in the silence. So whereas someone who's extroverted would, if there was silence in the tour, they would fill it, right? They would fill that silence. But people who are eccentric, introverted, that's their comfort spot, not making conversation. So his ability to let that be safe, where we're looking through the package or we're walking on the patio or something, you're not feeling that. Those people felt very comfortable. Mm-hmm. So giving them the room to be in their natural comfortability. And guess what? They trusted him and booked him because the chatter was the uncomfortable part. Mm-hmm. So I think you have to be a student of who you're in front of and then see, okay, how am I going to be myself authentically, but also give them the room for them to be authentic?
That's amazing. That's so great. I have an offbeat question for you.
Please.
It just came to me, and I'm kind of going to put you on the spot. It's okay if you don't have an answer for this. Is there anyone outside of the industry, outside of the wedding and event industry, a sales coach, as someone maybe that people see marketing to them on social media or whatever, who you followed, who has some really good sales coaching advice that's relevant for our industry outside of the wedding and event industry?
Oh my gosh. I follow so many people because I am a student of almost like the likes and clicks. I like to see what people are responding to and how you can, you know what I mean? Right. But I think that Camille Moore, she's a marketing coach and she is on TikTok and Instagram. And she has amazing insight on the marketing side of sales, on like doing behavioral case studies. So she'll take a product like Yeti, right? Or she'll take a product and then she looks at what their strategy is on how they connect with clients. And then I think it's so relevant to the venue side. You could take anything that she teaches and turn it into a venue lesson. So I would definitely say follow her.
Okay, amazing. Amazing. Hey friends, Jonathan here. Just want to take a moment and share about Common Sense Events consulting packages. We are really excited to be consulting with a few more companies this year, and we've done it in the past successfully, and it's been such a blast. So this year, we want to take on a couple more consulting clients. Unfortunately, because of the venues that we currently manage and the intention and the focus that we have on that, we're only able to take on a limited amount, but we do have a couple slots for venues. So if you are interested, we have both 90 and 120-day programs available, or we can come in and partner with you on marketing, sales, operations, and help fine-tune any of the systems that are in those categories. So if you are interested in that, we would absolutely love to hear from you and see if there's a way that we could partner with you and serve you at your venue. Go ahead, fill out the link that is in the description in this video or podcast. You can also just send us an email at venues@cseventservices.com, and we'd love to chat with you. All right, back to the show. I figured that you'd have someone because you said several times you're a student. I can see your feed probably is full of not just people specific to our industry, but just, you're a sponge, you're absorbing and soaking and all that. Okay, so let's pivot. Let's transition a little bit here. Your company, Rainmaker, you work with catering sales teams. You work with venue teams. Talk to me about the difference that you observe between venues that are like a catering company, essentially, that lives inside a venue versus a venue sales team that's primarily venue focused. And then they might sell packages, or maybe it's just blank canvas or things like that. Are there some fundamental differences between how sales are approached from those two types of venues?
Great question. So I work with more companies that do venue and catering together, right? But I do work with companies that have catering partners and preferreds right? And what I know is the venue eats first. And no matter what capacity, if you're looking at the hierarchy of which vendors have the opportunity, the sales opportunity, most it's venues, right? Because you can't do anything in your planning without your date. And that's where the venue lives. Sometimes they'll go to a caterer, or sometimes they'll go to the photographer and say, I want you, so I'm going to see what you have available. But I think you'd agree that it's fewer and far between than venue coming first. So for those two things, they're the same. They have the most sales opportunity. And I think what I'd like to consider is what is the ideal demographic for that venue, right? I don't think that any venue is unsellable. I really don't. It just means that the price point has to be right, and there needs to be someone who buys that, right? So in my experience, I sold a new venue on the Hudson River waterfront just as much as I sold a venue that had opulent chandeliers and was built in the 1990s and had a very strong feeling of what that inspiration was within, right? Not opposite of a blank canvas.
Yeah.
So, but sold them the same, because you have to find who the demographic is that's willing to buy it and make sure that it's priced, appropriately. Mm-hmm. And I think then that ties to how you're telling clients what you have to offer through social. I think that in both catering clients who have venues, and you need strong socials, because social is how Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, if you do corporate sales, that's how someone is going to validate you right now. If they put you on their short list organically through word of mouth, or they've been to an event at your venue or something like that, they go to your social media for validation of, is this venue good enough for me to say yes to them? I don't know if I answered your question there.
That was great. I was just thinking for a second. My mind was literally like, I was still for a moment because my mind was like exploding. I had several questions. I want to circle back around. I want to go deep on tours and like on that sales process, because I think that's going to be very practical for listeners. But before we talk about that, I'm curious your take. You said you'd sell it the same way. I have seen that there are more venues, and I think you'd probably agree, there's more venues open today than there ever have been, in the past. Like, there's more and more and more supply, and there's fairly consistent demand. It's not like year after year, there's more and more and more people getting married, but there are more and more venues opening, and there are venues closing, and there are venues, like, there's a lot of activity and action within our industry right now. And partially because of COVID. And I mean, we could ascribe all the reasons to it, but regardless of that, we know, venue owners who are listening know, that there are more venues in their market now than there were before. So how do you, as a salesperson at a venue, take that into account when you know that the person that showed up, they might have toured 3 or 5 other places. They might have toured the place right down the road. How do you help people differentiate and kind of communicate what's special about them? Why book there versus booking at the other 7 places in the area?
Mm-hmm. So I think that the first 5 is very important, right? When let's assuming you mentioned getting the tour. That's a whole other ballgame on how you get the tour. But when they have narrowed you down and they're taking time out of their very busy schedule to qualify you and say, I'm going to come in for a tour, that first 5 is extremely important. I would want any salesperson not to move from that lobby spot first 5 minutes. Don't reference what's happening with the venue, right? It's like your listen and love time. And it is going to be about how much information did you gather about that client in the pre-tour process, and how you could apply that to the conversation. Because, Jonathan, when you walk into a store, right, and a salesperson says, can I help you with anything today? What do? Like, I'm okay, right?
Yeah.
I'm not ready.
Yeah.
Just looking, right?
Yep.
Or if you walked into a store, I just came from the Midwest and we don't have this in New York, but someone says, welcome in, right? I love that. I love that language, like welcome in, like, and you feel like, oh, okay, I feel comfortable here. And then they say something like, can I put that on the counter for you? Or can I, like that kind of natural progression. I think when we start talking in the tour process about the date, the time, the number of guests, the whatever, those are, it's like we're speed dating, and there's no emotional connection there in those things. It's not that the things are not important, but you should get those details pre-tour, right? Here we're talking about if you have trouble with small talk and you want to talk about the weather or the traffic or where they came in from all those small talk conversations, I don't want you to leave that space until you find that you have sized them up for who you need to be in that tour. Are you someone that is going to be delivering information? Is it someone that they really need help, they're bewildered, and they need you to be orchestrate this experience for them? Are they really knowledgeable about and they are savvy in this process, and they need you to communicate that you're going to be their partner in executing their vision? Whatever it is, I don't want you to leave until you understand who you are. Just like we talked about earlier in our conversation of waiting tables, your great servers are not the same for each table they travel to, right? They're not the same.
Nope. So true. So true.
We have to be different.
I love that you said take the first 5 minutes, because I think there's probably, I've given hundreds and hundreds of tours at this point, and I think that there's a sense of, especially when you're packing a day full of tours, maybe even have back-to-back tours, of like, hey, great, nice to see you. Okay, so I have here, and even if you have the details in front of them and you're reviewing the details, and okay, so you're looking at this date and blah, 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 it's like you're getting right to business. You don't even know if you can serve them yet. Mm-hmm. I mean, you must conclude that they're interested in the venue because they did take the time to show up and drive out or whatever. Mm-hmm. But you don't know if you can serve them yet. You don't know what need they're serving. You're serving for them. And so I love that. Like, just take the first 5 minutes. That's a great nugget.
And I've had I'm sure you've had this because you're so likable, like beautiful experiences with clients who will make adjustments to their plans because they can't imagine doing it without you now. When they're considering 3 of the venues, there's such a saturation. You don't want them to compare apples to apples. You don't want them to say, this had an outside patio, this had great lighting, this one had a screen included, and so did this. You don't want them comparing that because then you're going to lose on price, right? Mm-hmm. You want them to comparing, we really love Jonathan. That's who, right? Like, he was great. And so how many times, like, socially for listeners, do you get emails as a response to your follow-up of the tour, and they say something like, we really love spending time with you. That's the qualifier right there. That's going to be on their list and that's the first 5 minutes. That connector time, that's like the beauty of how you get that on the list.
Yeah. Margaret, I'm gonna take us off beat for a second on this. I think it's very similar to the way that we choose our significant other. A lot of us maybe had a list of, qualifications, maybe characteristics, maybe, whatever, when we were younger, right? Oh, I want, him or her to be blonde, or to be tall, or to be, a brunette, or to be this or that, or whatever we wanted, whatever we imagined, an athlete or a musician, and maybe they mirrored things that we were excited about or appreciated or whatever. It's funny because a lot of times the people that we do end up with don't fit that list exactly, but they did connect with our hearts. They did provide something for us. And so I think that's very similar with how people choose their venues. I mean, they need the venue to do some certain things, but they're not lining all of the venues up. And if you are a venue in that line that's made no emotional connection and then you're just all lined up, it's going to come down to these very nuts and bolts. It'll come down to money. It'll come down to some of the characteristics. And unless you've thrown millions of dollars at your venue and it is perfect, you're not going to be able to connect with a client that's going to love you so intensely that they're not going to complain about anything. They're going to leave an amazing review for you. They're going to be easy to work with. Those dream clients, right? That we all want.
Right. I think that you talked before about, like, how do you train someone for this? One of the exercises that I always do is tell me about the companies that you love buying from, right? Who are they? Like, why do you buy from them? So, and we can talk about big brands to find out, like, those big themes of selling to clients, but also like the mom and pop places that you go to, like, what about them do you love? And sometimes it is about speed and convenience. or like customizable options, or I love that I get a punch card from them, a loyalty program, or I love that like they remember my name or something like that. There's so many different reasons why we buy from people over and over again. And that's where you get legacy clients. That's where you get people who come back to you and are faithful to you on the corporate side, where they want to do their holiday party with you every year, to the weddings where I've done weddings for 3 sisters in the same family, in the same venue. And whereas like it's not going to be the same sister's wedding over and over again, but it's going to be specific to them. But the loyalty is there, right? So when you break open why you buy from the people that you buy from, you could identify themes. And as salespeople, we're pattern finders. You can think about the themes why you buy from people. You could apply it to your own venue and your own business and say, if I like that, probably other people appreciate it too.
Mm-hmm. Talk to me. You said legacy, and I love that you said kind of repeat business. Obviously, we don't want repeat business unless it's corporate in this industry, but isn't there a way to kind of turn a client into a repeat business opportunity?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think repeat client, maybe you're asking the wrong person, because I had so many people who I did so many members of their family, like a repeat family, right? Maybe not a repeat couple, but a repeat family. Don't think that I did not say, a lead came in and said, Margaret, we're ready to book. And then when I saw her and didn't meet her groom yet, I said what I had in my system, and it was a different groom, Jonathan, that she was just waiting to get the right person to be married at the wedding. So I was like, so sorry. That was a learning experience for me in my head. I wouldn't assume that again. I'm blushing.
You're like, tell me the whole story. Tell me what happened. I love it.
But what I'm saying, when you say like repeat clients, every wedding couple that we marry has a network, right? Yep. And so whether it is a social network or it's a corporate network, they are communicating with their circle. So you have, I like to think of the extension of their circle as part of the legacy clients, right? Where you have a group of friends, like in the Hudson Valley, we're right next to Marist College. And so, or Vassar College. And I've done so many friend groups from those colleges because they want to come back to the area. And then they go, oh, you have to talk to my friend. You have to talk to my person, Margaret. She'll take care of you. And it becomes part of this like repeat business, this legacy of I want to work with you. And I think that's an opportunity for all the new salespeople to build that legacy network.
Absolutely. And, I think we saw that happen a lot in this industry 10, 20 years ago. And maybe it's still, and I know it still occurs at different places in the South. You have the country club that everyone gets married at. You have the hall. And this is also very true with ethnic weddings.
Yes.
It's the hall that everyone goes to because it fits that specific need. So once you click into that, you start to realize that if you can develop that rapport with your clients, you may sell that client, but you also may have just sold referrals for 9 other people as well.
Yeah, especially with parents, right, Jonathan? There's nothing that parents of a couple love more than say, you need to talk to my person. Yes. Right? Their friend's child gets married and they're saying, make sure this venue is on your list and drop my name, and so that feels really good. When you're giving tours, this is not my piece of advice, but it's just, I think, common knowledge. You have to make friends with the friend of the couple. So if there's a best friend in the tour, right? Like I think showing them care and attention is just as important as the person that you're touring, because they're going to be in the car with an opinion.
I love that you said this. I've said that to my team before. I've said, if you create an amazing impression on the bridesmaid, on the mom, on Auntie Sue, who came with them for the tour, you literally are going to put a salesperson right next to the seat with them on the hour drive home. And they're going to be going, oh, did you just love how it did? Like they're going to book just because that's all that did you check out? Hey, if you booked at that one place, oh, I loved them. They were so great. You want that. You want that.
Yes. And the friend, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that's that 5 minutes you were talking about. Like you get to learn about that in that 5 minutes. Who's here? Who's making the decisions? Who's going to be a vocal member of that tour group,
Yes. And in those exchanges, I would want salespeople to become hyper aware of what the friend pays attention to. Okay. So if you walk into the room and you have a sample table set up, let's say, and the friend goes, I love this linen, right? That should go into your CRM. Or they walk into the ballroom and a song is playing and they giggle at that song. Like, we love that song. Put that song in your CRM. Whatever that friend is bringing up or loving or has an adverse to, make sure because give it a beat. If that person is coming for the second visit, you want to be able to reference those things or like pick things that are adjacent to that. Like if they said, we're going out to lunch for Mexican, right? And you put that in your CRM, maybe we have margaritas the next time they come in for the second with the parents, or you ask about that or something like that, because remembering those details are the magic. That's the magic.
It takes people from feeling like a number to feeling like you are really invested in them because you remembered. The truth of the matter is, as venue owners, as venue operators, as venue salespeople, you've got a million things that are on your mind. So, and you didn't directly say this, but use the CRM, like use the notes on the CRM, people, even if it's just you. Because I have a lot of people that say, well, it's just our family, or, oh, we don't really have employees, or, oh, we don't. Do it for you. But it's a local cost because it does take a little extra work to write it down and all that, but there's a global benefit to your venue. And so love that. I love that stuff.
You said stacking your day with tours before, and it made me think, you need 5 minutes between your tours, even if your host or hostess or a coworker entertains your tour in the lobby. You really need to go into a place where you could download those nights, write them down, put them into the computer somewhere where you can write the nuances down. Because if you have 6 tours in the day, recalling the 9 a.m. nuances is very difficult, right? You go like, was it that person or that person? Who was going to a reunion this weekend? Or like something like that. So it takes 5 minutes and write those notes down. Write about what the body language of dad was, or like I'm very hyper aware of what's going on in the tour, like whose legs are crossed to one another, right? Like who is announcing themselves as in the person in charge of the tour. I've studied Tracy Brown, who is a body language expert since the start of my career. She's talked at Wedding MBA and Cater Source and things, and any body language expert like that. I mean, if you want to get better in sales, study that.
Yeah. Hey friends, Jonathan here, and I wanted to share about Common Sense Events consulting packages. If you are a venue owner and you're struggling with your marketing, your sales, your operations, or maybe there's just, you're new to the industry and you want to really have a leg up and get a jump start on getting your business going and not make a lot of the mistakes that oftentimes people make, the mistakes that we made, frankly, when we first started, we would love to chat with you and see if there's a way that we can serve you. Our team has experience working with over 10 venues all across the United States, doing consulting. We've hosted hundreds and hundreds of weddings at this point, and we know what it takes to be successful. If this sounds interesting to you, we would love to chat with you. You can either reach out by filling out the link in the description of the video or podcast, or you can just email us at venues@cseventservices.com, and we would love to chat with you and see if there's a way that we can serve you. All right, back to the show. We need to get her on the show. Which is huge. So Margaret, and I want to talk about, because you mentioned parents, and I think it's really important. Like, we're not just selling to the couple. Oftentimes we're selling to the parents. There's a really multi-generational thing that happens here at weddings and events. But before we transition to that, and we'll kind of wrap with that today, what are some other skills? You mentioned body language and kind of being able to be hyper aware of that. But what are some other skills that if someone doesn't feel, or maybe they're not naturally inclined to sales, what are some things they can study to become more skilled at sales?
The first trait. I think sales people have 4 major traits that are truly successful. I think hunger is one of them. Different than competition. It like burns within you, right? It's pushing yourself to be better rather than pushing yourself to be better than someone else, right? So I think that's one thing that you need. The next thing I think is you need self-awareness. Like that is, out of all things, I think when you think of confidence and hunger, confidence is another one. You need that pre-planted, some confidence. And, but with self-awareness, that's the skill that if you want to be better connecting with people and navigating conversations, you have to understand yourself really well. Take an assessment. You know, you can go to something like 16 personalities and take that free test. Anyone that I've ever coached or had on my sales team, I have them take a personality assessment and I show them mine, right? Because I think that relationship, you need to understand yourself and the people you work with. You know, like Rainmaker is my personality assessment. It is on the culture index. I am the Rainmaker. And the first time I did that culture index test, I felt like I was reading my diary, Jonathan. It gave me like all of my things that I am, my strengths, but also my opportunities and maybe my weaknesses in there. So, but being aware of them, I sit right next to those. And that's what I want any salesperson to do. You can't lean into your strengths only. You have to sit next to your weakness every single day. If you know that you are, big picture and you love communicating, but you're terrible at notes and you hate your CRM. Most closers hate their CRM because it's not how they're wired. You have to sit next to that. If you really want to get better, you have to pay attention to what you are not strong in.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really powerful. And I love that you said share yours, because one thing we found, and we've actually, I was smiling because we've used 16 personalities. We all used DISC, and then we've also used predictive index. Mm-hmm. And one of the things when you mention a test like that or a quiz like that to people have generally heard of them, and they say, "Oh yeah, I've taken one of those at some point in their life," right? Some sort of assessment. But it sometimes can feel like I'm gonna take this test and it's gonna reveal all these things to you about me, and it can put some people on edge a little bit because it's like I'm gonna be revealed all of my whoever I am. But it's very disarming when you say, yeah, and here's the test and here's mine. And we're going to do this because we want the best way to work together. I know that's not sales necessarily. It's more team management and stuff like that. But
I think it is for both, right? It is. I had an owner of a venue. I had a general manager of the venue, and like, I'm built this way, like as an idea person. Right. So I'd always come in and like, I have a great idea for the venue and this is what it is. And I would just regurgitate everything that was on top of mind. And his first reaction was like, no, we can't do that because of costs, right? Or something like that, like always like very practical. Mm-hmm. And it was such a learning moment when the owner of the venue watched this exchange and he said, I could show the two of you this glass. And if you pointed to the general manager, you would tell me how many ounces of water the glass could hold, how much it costs, how much breakage we would have for the glass. And he said, and Margaret, I would look at you and you would tell me 10 things and none of them would have to do with the glass, right? Because we look at the world differently. And if you want to have success in sales and success in your career, learning the way that your coworkers approach work, right, is such an edge on anyone else. Because I knew after that I would write out my idea. I would email the idea and say, can I have time on your calendar tomorrow to go over this? Because he needed to digest. He needed to think about it. And then he could come at me with some questions. And we were much more proactive in the way that we worked together. And I think that if you want to get better in no matter what you do, if you find success in the way that you communicate with your team, you can communicate better with your clients. You're like, you talked about friction. You take that away.
100%. I realized we got sidetracked. We went deep into that. So you said two things, right? We said drive, we said hunger, right? And then we said self-awareness. So what are the other two? You said four.
And confidence. That was my fourth one, right? Confidence, self-awareness, hunger, and oh my gosh, what's my fourth one? I'm going blank. We're going to come back to it when I
maybe that's
what? Well, I think, but I think, yes, that is a talent. I'm going to put that as my fourth one.
You got to four. I love it. Yeah. It is, you can study each one of these individual pieces and then you can put them together if you're more analytical and you're not as, spontaneous and kind of off the cuff. If you learn kind of these pieces and you can put them together, it does make a good framework. Let's talk.
Can I change my answer? My other one is empathy. That's my fourth one.
I love this. Yeah.
That's my fourth one is empathy. You have to be able to understand what's happening right now with the other person and put yourself in their shoes. So I think with like venue sales, we look at a lot of times, that also helps you with conflict resolution when people have an objection to venues, right? Mom comes in and she's looking at the ceiling and there's a watermark on it, or she doesn't like the way this is displayed, or picks apart the contract. I would say to that salesperson, I want you to think about great mother relationships that you have in your life, whether it be with your mom or your kids or someone that is maternal in your life. It comes down to it's not good enough for their baby, right? That's what it comes down to. So if you're able to approach it in a way that says like, you know what? My mom would be doing the same exact thing as you. She'd be advocating for me. And I identify so much with that because my relationship with my mom is really strong. Let's do this together so it can be good enough for your baby, right? You approach it that way. Now you're on the same side of the desk.
Totally. I love that you said same side of the desk. So let's talk about the generational aspect of this. How in a tour, you're going to have multiple personalities, probably people of multiple ages, right? How do you relate to both of those demographics, whether you have a boomer and then you have how do you navigate those relationships?
Good question. So I think the first thing is you have to start with education. And as salespeople, we're pattern finders. So I like to look at in the education stage, how boomers, Gen X, millennials, Zennials, Gen Z, whomever it is, how do they approach their work, right? And how do they approach tech? Those are the two things that I like to look at for sales. So if I said baby boomers, like their work approach is, they have a strong work ethic. They're loyal to employers. They prioritize professional accomplishments, right? Like those kind of things. They prefer face-to-face communication. And then for someone like a millennial native who grew up in the internet and social media, if you're looking about tech influence, study those. If you go in, everyone has an article about how to categorize all of these demographics, right? So become a student of them and understand what makes them tick. This next part is I like to look at case studies where people who have spent a lot of money on research and development have done the work for us, right? You look to the automobile industry, you look to the big fast food industry, you can see that they have had money behind focus groups and they're not going to spend their money haphazardly. So if you look at the automotive industry, right, what is their general strategy when it comes to, let's say, boomers and Gen X, right? They know that they like a consultative approach. So they are going to emphasize long-term value and relatability, right? Reliability, those kind of things. So maybe it's that we have to focus on to mom and dad and grandparents, and that's what we're going to focus on about, like how long we've been here and what it means to be here and why people trust us and the high quality of customer service and things like that. That's what I would focus on for someone who is in conversation, right? But make sure that I hit points so their ear perks up, and that's a high priority for me, right? That's something that I identify in my, and then maybe for boomers and Gen X, it's a very personal follow-up. They like phone calls and emails and things that are, and then when you look at something that's adjacent, how did Volvo, let's say, how did they target Gen X and boomers? Well, like they did Volvo Lifesaver, right? So they have like emergency health and emergency readiness, and it get a feature now that detects a heart attack while you're driving, right? So I take that R&D and then say, okay, should in this instance, I talk about that all of my captains or venue managers are trained in CPR and the Heimlich maneuver, something like that, right? What's going to be something that is adjacent to that I can use in my venue, or for like reliability and trust and testimonials and things like that. That demographic is going to really lean into something like that. Whereas if I want to focus on the generation of Gen Z or millennials, maybe I'd focus on something about like, if I was looking at fast food, like simplifying the booking process, right? Like that's something that I look at do you have a Calendly link for tours? If someone has a question about a contract, are you using software like Loom? Loom is a great software where you can walk them through your proposal and just be in the little side corner, and you can send that as a link, and they say, okay, this is the explanation to clause number 4. And personally, I did it, but it's so easy. It's so at their fingertips, right? So I think we have to approach things where look at what bigger companies are investing money in, and then apply it to your business and your venue. So, I mean, you can do it so many different ways. Like I was talking about loyalty programs before. That is definitely a Gen X boomer, something that they really value about repeat business. So maybe there's a referral program for your venue, or I work with a venue that, what they do on the corporate side is they have, loyalty dollars that each dollar they spend, they get that off in their next event. And you can't believe how many people come back because they want to spend their loyalty bucks. That's why Kohl's is always in the black, right?
Exactly. Well, and Starbucks is just a big bank, and Chick-fil-A, what they've done monetizing their app and kind of, you load funds onto that app. So now if I'm thinking about fast food and I know I've got $65 sitting in the app, I'm much more likely to go there because I want to spend that money, but they're also holding those funds.
Yeah.
So, and love it. I love it.
Yeah. You could go to like community engagement, right? Like with millennials and Gen Z, if you have eco-friendly practices that you have in your, I had a couple, I'm in New York, and we always have like very big cocktail hours and like gorge yourself on varieties and things. And they were very interested in sustainable practices. So that was something, as soon as I heard that, am I going to talk about the trough, like, stations where it's so much of variety, or am I going to pivot and make sure that I am connecting with them and meeting them where they are and talking about things that, you know what, we do a little recycling. We recycle all of our oil here. We prioritize like, our values, and this is what our core values are for our company. I think that you have to make those pivots in that generational divide.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Margaret, this is fantastic. I think one thing you've highlighted really well is just being a student of who your clients are, who you're able to serve, who loves the venue, who's coming to the venue, so that you can kind of position yourself better. I want to wrap with this question. Let's say you're brand new, brand new. Maybe you don't even have your building yet. And so you don't know who those clients are quite yet, right? You have an idea of who you want to serve, but you don't necessarily know who's going to be walking through the door yet. So you start your marketing, and you put the pictures on the internet and everywhere else, and then you start getting tours, and you're really still kind of lost. Like, you don't know who your client is. You haven't identified that. What's the best way to shorten that learning curve so it doesn't take you a year or 2 years to figure out? How can salespeople, venue owners, venue operators learn quicker who they're best at serving when they're at the very, very beginning?
Such a great question. I am a salesperson through and through, so I feel that if you are a new salesperson, your person is going to be the person who is as similar to you. I would challenge every new salesperson to say, who's saying yes to me? Who's the person that's saying yes? And I would almost bet that if they are green in the industry, that the person who's saying yes to them is so similar to them, because that's who people are going to gravitate towards, right? And so and I think we see that in our personal life. You know that when you get around your family, talk a certain way, you act a certain way, you have different mannerisms than maybe you do at work. And if you are, and the people that you're connecting with naturally, those are your clients. And then the step above that is, as you're giving tours, who are you connecting with and who do you want to connect with, right? So I think that all sales, we have to, you can't do it inauthentically. People can spot a sale. They can, oh, you like the color red? I love the color red. You love dancing? I love dancing. That's not it. That's not people like themselves. It's genuineness. There's a part there that you have to explore when you're giving those tours. What is it that this client needs? And I hate to make it sound so simple, but when you focus on that, when you actually are a great listener and you apply the reason why you buy from places, anyone can be your client. It's not one type. I think it is, you will find that you start booking Thursdays and Saturdays and Sunday afternoons, because those people are not the same.
Does it matter if I'm listening to this right now, I own a venue, I'm 60 years old, and maybe I'm not the same age? Because like we said right before, our clients aren't the same age. We're,
right.
What about that?
Okay. So many times, I hear this a lot from venue owners. They say, my salesperson won't pick up the phone, right? They won't call anyone. And they have to call people too. I think we have to be real listeners to each other. We have to learn from each generation. So if you're a venue owner and you're 60, like you said, and you have a sales team of mid 20-year-olds and they won't pick up the phone, but your demographic is a wedding couple and they're in that same demographic, I would ask them, why don't you want to call anyone? Why? What? Tell me why. Well, because they don't call anyone in their personal life, right? What do? We voice text each other, or we, however they communicate. You have to be a listener to them and then say, let's do this. This could be a whole other hour, this conversation that we're having. But you have to say, okay, this demographic of my salespeople are not using this type of technology. Okay. So am I going to tell them to try and reach everyone in that way, the way that I communicate? Or am I going to be a forever learner and say, okay, if you're communicating with parents, maybe this is the strategy because I'm of this demographic. I want you to learn from me. They're going to appreciate a phone call. They're going to appreciate a voicemail. They're going to appreciate a personal email, right? But if I'm going to be a student of you as my salespeople to say, I need to build in some new strategies like Captivated, right? Captivated is a great piece of tech that manages all your text messages for your venue or for any business. And I'm going to incorporate that into our sales plan because I understand that texts have a 95% open rate and it's a way that this demographic wants to communicate, I'm going to build that into our process, right? So we're learning from one another.
I love that. I love that so much. Learning from your team and not adding in friction because they won't necessarily do something. That's great. That's really great. Margaret, thank you so much for coming on today. This has been so much fun. This is fantastic.
I appreciate you so much in what you do and your time with me today. Thank you.
Awesome. If people want to connect with you, they want to learn more about Rainmaker, what you do, maybe they even want to have you speak at a conference or convention or something like that, what's the best way to reach you?
Well, my website is rainmakersalesmarketing.com, and you can follow me on Instagram. I give unsolicited sales advice all day long on my, that's specific, really just specific to venues and catering. That's who I work with. And so, follow me there.
I'm typing it in. What am I typing in?
Rainmaker.
Awesome.
Sales Marketing. That's my handle.
Boom. I'm following you. Hope everyone follows you as well and sends you a DM. This has been great. This has been so great. Thank you.
Thank you too.
Hey there, wanted to take a quick break and share a little bit about Common Sense Events and the consulting services that we provide. In the past year, Common Sense Events has been able to partner with several venues and provide consulting services around everything from marketing, sales, and operations. We've worked with families, helping smooth out operational hiccups. We've worked with teams to help their marketing departments book more events, and we've worked with sales teams to make sure they're able to have higher converting tours. So if that sounds interesting to you, we would love to have a conversation about that. You can contact us at venues@cseventservices.com. You can also just reach out on the podcast and send us a DM if this is interesting to you. But we would love to talk with you and see if there's a way that we can partner with you and your venue and help make your venue run smoother. All right, back to the show.